I remember when me and this girl got arrested, we ended up going into a prison cell, and let's just say what ended up happening in there was extremely illegal. But I mean, we were already in jail, so... Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another embarrassing but crazy story. Now, this story all takes place back in my grade 10 year, and I'm not gonna lie, my grade 10 year, I was a massive player, and I would basically do anything that walked. I know that sounds really insane, but you gotta understand, I had no standards whatsoever. But I remember one time my grade 10 year, I went to the science class that basically most students would go to. Basic grade 10 science where you learn about biology, chemistry, you know, all the sciences. And I remember every time I would go and the teacher would take attendance, there was always one person missing in that attendance list. And it was a girl's name that no one knew who she was. No joke, I think she only showed up for like the first day of the semester and then never showed up again. We never understood why. Most of us thought she changed schools, or maybe she just didn't exist, or maybe it was just a prank or someone that was trying to just make us feel like there was a person always missing. But towards the end of the year, that's when things started to change, because finally we ended up putting a name to the face. When the final 2 months of the semester were finally coming, I remember I went inside my science class and sat down with all my friends that were there and seeing since the beginning of the semester. And when the teacher was taking attendance, I remember she ends up saying this girl's name that was usually missing, except this time we ended up hearing a voice going, here. At that moment, when we heard someone say here, we ended up all looking around the classroom, and we were shocked to see that this girl actually existed. She was dressed like a total emo girl, and I remember all of us were totally shocked that she was actually like a living person. But one thing was for sure, at that moment when I saw her with my own two eyes, I actually ended up kind of falling for her. I don't know what it was about her. Maybe it was the bad girl vibe she gave me, but I'm not gonna lie, I kind of was into her. So I remember when the bell rang and class finally ended, she was one of the first people to walk out of the classroom. And I remember I ended up following up behind her saying, hey, haven't seen you in class before, or ever I should say. What was your name again? Why do you need to know that? Oh, well, because I don't know, I thought you were kind of cute and I just want to know, you know, who you were. Oh, well, like, I don't think it really matters, but like, here, give me your phone. At that moment, she ended up taking my phone and ended up putting her number in it. And I gotta say, it was definitely one of the easiest numbers I could get. But then afterwards, I remember she ends up handing my phone back to me and saying to me, if you ever like doing fun stuff, just let me know. And then she ends up walking away. At that moment, I obviously knew in my mind that I love doing fun stuff. Hell, one of the main things I like doing that's super fun was the Devil's Tango. So I remember I ended up texting her literally as she was walking away saying, hey, I'm down for some fun, question mark. And at that moment, she was still like down the hallway. So she ends up turning around as she looked at her phone of me texting her. And she's like, okay, well, like, come on, let's go, is what she says literally down the hallway looking at me. So I remember me and her, we ended up leaving after school and we ended up heading out together. Me and her ended up walking towards the park. And at this park, there was a skate park that most kids would hang out at. But this girl apparently knew a lot of people in the skate park that were really sketchy. But I remember as her and I ended up walking up to them in the skate park, they all ended up looking at me as if I was crazy. As if I was crazy for even hanging out with her. But I was super confused on why until I remember one of the guys ended up coming up to me and saying, ah, you got yourself a new victim. Nice. Wait, what? She's not my victim. I know she's not your victim. You're her victim, is what he says. And at that point, I started to get kind of worried. The girl ended up saying to me afterwards, like, oh, like, he's just joking. Don't worry about it. But in reality, he wasn't joking, because what ends up happening next got a little out of hand. Because I remember when everyone started to leave and it started to get dark, me and this girl were still hanging out together. And me thinking that this girl was going to invite me back to her place at some point, she ends up saying to me instead, here, let's go do something fun. Follow me. And then this girl ends up dragging me all the way to the parking lot. Of all places, I don't know how the parking lot was a fun place to hang out at. And there was no way I was going to do it in the parking lot. But then afterwards, I remember this girl ends up looking at me saying, okay, Bubba, out of all the cars in this parking lot, which one do you like the most? At that moment, I remember me and her started to walk around the parking lot talking about cars. And this girl had enough knowledge about cars for some reason, to the point where I ended up seeing a really nice Mustang that I was madly in love with. And I said, oh, like, if I could have any car, I'd probably get that one right there. Oh, like the blue Mustang? Yeah, it's a really nice car. Okay, here, follow me. And at that point, she ends up going right up against the Mustang. And she ends up pulling something out of her purse and somehow unlocking it. At first, I thought it was her car until we sat inside of it. And I realized that the alarm was going off. And on top of that, she was opening the bottom of the steering wheel to basically hotwire the car. Yeah, now I started to realize how this girl was known to be really sketchy. And there was no way this girl hasn't ended up being in prison yet. And by yet, I mean really soon. Because I remember once me and her ended up stealing the car, we ended up driving around. And reminder, we were in grade 10 and none of us had our actual full licenses to be driving like that. So obviously, I started to freak out a little and start to worry that this girl might actually kill me. But I remember as me and her were driving, we ended up going around, and there was one moment where at a red light, this girl thought it was a good idea to rev the car of the Mustang that she doesn't even own. I don't know why she was revving it, but she was revving it so hard to the point where black smoke started to come out the back of the car. And that's when I heard the one thing I did not need to hear at that moment, and that was sirens. No joke, we ended up hearing a whoop, whoop, and I started to worry. I remember the girl ends up pulling over, and she started starts panicking and she's like, okay, Baba, listen to me, okay? I'm gonna do my method. You just act calm and pretend you're not here. Pretend I'm not here. I'm in the passenger seat. And that's when we end up getting a knock on the window. We got a knock on the window and it was the cop that was, well, really annoyed of why we were revving the car. And when we rolled down the window, the first thing he says is, ma'am, can I get your license and registration? Oh, officer, I would, but like, I don't have it on me. And like, I totally forgot it back at home. Honestly, like, this is my first time getting pulled over. I'm so sorry I was revving the car. Like, my little brother was telling me that I should rev it. And honestly, like, I was just so confused. At that moment, she starts bawling her eyes out somehow, which I don't know how girls have that superpower to just cry whenever on command. But I remember I was just looking at her thinking, did this girl just really call me her little brother? Like, I'm half brown. We don't look anything alike. But I remember this officer ends up looking at me and he started to realize that this girl is full of baloney. And that's when he ends up saying, okay, you two out of the car right now. You guys are coming with me. I remember this girl ends up trying to bawl her eyes out even more to make sure the cop like kind of like felt empathy for her. But the cop wasn't taking any of it. And it got to the point where I just got out of the car, put my hands behind my back, and we ended up sitting in the back of his police car and going back to the station with him. When we got to the station, I remember he ended up basically making us wear these orange outfits. And at that moment, I really felt the vibe that this was really bad news. I remember the girl just starts looking at me and she ends up putting away the crying act and just acts all calm about everything as if she's done this before. And I just look at her saying, yo, what are we gonna do to get out of this? I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's not that bad anyway. They put like a mattress in there sometimes. Wait, what? You've been here before? Maybe once or twice. I don't really remember, to be honest. Are you serious right now? Is what I had in my mind going over and over, thinking this was a really bad idea to hang out with this girl in the first place. But then I remember a cop ends up taking me and this girl into a prison cell. And the funniest part was that they ended up putting us both in the same prison cell. I think it's because we were both still high schoolers at the time, so they didn't think it was a big deal. But I remember when we both got put into the same cell and the cop walked away, the girl ends up looking at me and she's like, well, I mean, hey, at least there's a mattress in here. You want to like, you know, have some fun? Yeah, sure. What do you want to do? Here, come here. And at that moment, she ends up coming close to me and we start making out inside the prison cell. To be honest, I was really surprised that this girl was in the mood in the first place. But I remember since we had a prison sentence of 12 hours, we had a lot of fun in there. No joke. I think we did the Devil's Tango over 20 times until finally the cop ended up coming back and releasing us after 12 hours. And well, he kind of noticed that my hair and her hair were super messed up and he kind of put the picture together. But that's when he ended up saying, all right, you two, don't ever steal a car again. You understand? Don't do anything stupid. Next time I'm going to tell your parents. And he ends up releasing us. I think he was trying to do a scare factor, but honestly, if you guys don't believe the story is real at all, then follow for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.